Want to welcome you into it. Thank you so much for joining us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, financial advisors and the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about them, set up a time to speak with them over there on the website, welcomehomefp.com. As a reminder, that is a complimentary conversation. You can also give a call, 804-635-3550. 3 offices in the Richmond location. That number will get you where you need to be, though. Again, 804-635-3550, online, welcomehomefp.com. My name is Chris Vaughn. I'm pleased to be joined, as I always am, by the father-son team, Ralph and Tim. Good to see you again. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. How are your New Year's resolutions going? Out of curiosity.
So far, so good.
Okay. So far, I like the preface of that. Well,
so far, so good. We still got a couple weeks to go.
We still have
to get through the month.
We have the rest of the to get through the month. Yeah. We talked about it earlier that the cutoff point for a lot of people is January 10th. I think is what you said. And if your if your resolution was to get seriously about your retirement by tuning in, we're obviously on the right track here. The next step, of course, is letting the team put pen to paper. And again, 804-635-3550 is how it starts, whether it is a complimentary second opinion, whether it is a complimentary first opinion, whatever you need, that's how you get in touch with the team. I want to rewind to last year, not that far ago, but Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, made waves when he announced his retirement and then really quickly walked it back. After 6 decades, Warren Buffett is no longer the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. He is still on there in a capacity as a chairman. But many think that his experience and lessons are more relevant today than they've ever been. So let's talk about it. The man obviously knew what he was doing. What can retirement savers learn from Buffett's investment success?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of information there to unpack, and I don't think a 30-minute or an hour program is going to get us to that point where we can cover everything. But, I think we meet with so many people, a range of demographics and what have you, and there's some people who've done really good with savings. Some people haven't done quite as good. But I think one of the biggest points that he makes, and a lot of other people's making, we make too, is compounding interest, right? So, make time work for you. If you expect to become a millionaire by saving $1,000 a month for 5 years, you're probably not going to get there. But I think one of the most important philosophies that he's ever rolled out there is make time work for you, right? So, if you're starting out 20 years old, 30 years old, there's things that you've got to really determine, hey, if I can scrounge up $100 or $1,000 a month, things are going to end up looking better. Whereas if we've got a lot of time ahead of us, we're going to be in pretty decent shape. Not only compounding interest, but you've got market volatility, because if you're 55 years old and you were just now starting to save for retirement, you might not be able to take quite as much of a risk if you're only going to work for 5 years. Whereas if you're 20 years old, there's a whole lot more risk that you can take. So you've got to be patient with the process. But I think that's one of the most important things that I take away from him is just making that compound interest work for yourself.
And I would also say, Chris, that you've got a lot more time than I do right now because you're so young, but you need not worry so much about the ups and downs because you got that time factor. But I think another factor you need to take into consideration is, no matter what somebody might tell you and predicting the market, nobody can predict the market. You have to get to a point where you have a good feeling and a trust factor with the person that you're working with or whatever you're trying to do, because nobody's going to be able to predict what the market's going to do. And yes, before you chase returns, which most people try to do, and that's all they think about, guess what? Greed gets in the way for a lot of people. I mean, knee-jerk reactions because somebody told them to do this and do that, or they listen to it on the TV, or they listen to it, on the Wall Street Journal, something like that. They don't know anything about what you're trying to do. And that's one thing I think Warren was trying to tell everybody. You need to not regret doing something. You just need to say, hey, this is a path I want to go down, and this is, in case something doesn't go right, I just want to kind of maintain and see how things work, because most people aren't trained to do all the things that we help people do, but we need to keep it as simple as we can. Most advisors try to complicate it to make sure that the client thinks that they know everything about everything, but guess what? Nobody knows everything about everything, but Warren Buffett comes about as close as you can get, I would say, because he's got a track record to prove it. So
yeah,
if he kind of
does.
says something, you might ought to take that in consideration. Does he know everything, and is he right all the time? No, but nobody is. But You cannot argue with success. Would you agree with that, Tim?
No, I agree with that. But the biggest difference between us and the listeners and Warren Buffett is a few zeros in the bank account, right? So that's he can take more chances, and he can do different strategies that most Americans cannot, right? So that's one thing that you got to pay attention to. But I know that you said that nobody can predict the market, and I agree, but there's a lot of people out there that will say that they can. So those are the people you got to be leery of, because we never know when the next downturn is going to be. There's a lot of people out there that are doom and gloom. It depends on what TV channel you're watching at the current time, because if you flip it on one station, it's going to tell you one thing. You flip it on the opposite station, it's going to tell you something different. So that's why it's important. And I agree with keeping things simple. Is, you can get down the rabbit hole these days of cryptocurrency, hedge funds, private equity, all this stuff. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could wake up the next morning and your money's gone, right? So that's why it's important, depending on where you're at and as far as your retirement journey is concerned, if you're closer to retirement, we need to keep it probably a little bit more simpler than before. So time is not always on your side as we age, and as we, it's like a fine wine, right? We get better with age. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we're going to transition. We're going to do different things along the way. And we don't want to just stay in the same positions. We don't want to stay in the same investments that we have our entire life.
And I would say most people need to understand is most people, most consumers, most savers, their IQ when it comes to investment, they haven't been trained in this. And it's more about, do you have a plan? Do you have a roadmap to get to where you want to go? If you do, you need to stick with it. You need to have a discipline, because that is the hardest thing that people need to understand, is the emotional control when it comes to investing, because you're going to see some things along your journey, along your roadmap, that's probably going to scare you to death. But you need to have somebody that kind of holds your hand and kind of guides you through those down periods, because guess what? The only thing I can guarantee anybody is the market's going to go up, the market's going to go down. We just don't know when, and you just have to make sure you understand that and kind of get through those rough periods. Because if you're young, like Tim says, and young like Chris is, you can withstand all those different ups and downs. But the closer you get to retirement or in retirement, it's a little bit scarier, because you may not have that time for it to get back up if it does go down.
I always enjoy doing the show with you guys, because I never know exactly how old I'm going to be until Ralph tells me. We talked about resolutions right here at the beginning of the show, and a lot of the reason they go by the wayside early on, and I'm not here to judge or what. It's usually the discipline in there, especially when it comes to the gyms. It's really easy to make excuses, to have those emotional reasons to not go. But if you have someone to hold you accountable, personal trainer, a friend, those typically are more successful. So when it comes to the finances, if you have someone along the way to say, yeah, you know what, the market is going to fluctuate. It is going to go up. It is going to go down. You just need to make sure you don't have that emotional response, because we have a plan in place that we know that this is going to happen. Having that discipline in there, I think, is a great way to start. Now, we're not going to say you're going to be the next Oracle of Richmond or what have you, not going to have Warren Buffett returns. It would certainly be nice. But, getting you through whatever you want to do in retirement, it all starts with having a plan, like a retirement roadmap. And that is what the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners does and creates for people each and every day. So if you want to get serious about your retirement, as I think we all should, the show is called Aspire to Retire after all, pick up the phone, give a call, 804-635-3550, or go to the website, find out more about them, including the events they have going on around the area. The website is welcomehomefp.com. We talk frequently on the show about the need for an emergency fund. Personal finance expert, quote unquote, Susie Orman, believes seniors should save enough money to cover 3 to 5 years worth of living expenses and stash it in liquid accounts that are shielded from stock market turbulence and can easily be cashed out without having to sell any assets. Guys, 3 to 5 years sounds like a lot to save up. What do you think about Ms. Orman's thoughts here?
Well, I think, if we're looking at having a account that's protected from the stock market, to have 3 to 5 years worth of liquidity for the expenses, that is quite a bit, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Do we need to have a lot of savings built up for retirement? Sure, right? But it also depends on what your income level is in retirement and so on and so forth. But, if we're talking strictly just money market account, if we're looking at high yield savings, that type of thing, I think that's probably a little bit too much because everybody's expenses are going to be different, right? Some people can be $5,000 a month. Some people could be $15,000 a month. And you think about it, let's keep the math simple and say it's $10,000 a month. That's 120 grand for the year. Well, that's $360,000 in a savings account, which right now at this point in time, I don't think anybody's getting 4% anymore, right? In a high yield savings account. So you've really got to focus in on making your money work. Like we just talked about compounding interest and so on and so forth. You're really missing out. If you've got more money in the stock market, it just depends on what age you're at, right? So once again, Chris, I don't know how old you are today yet, but when it comes down to it, if we're looking at the emergency savings, do we need 3 to 5 years worth of expenses saved up in a high yield savings account or money market account? I disagree with that because now your money is not necessarily working for you. Now, if we're kind of anticipating 3 to 5 years worth of money in our 401ks or our TSPs, we probably need a little bit more than that, right? Just depending on how they're invested and so on. But, if we're just looking at liquid funds being in a money market account or CD or something like that, I don't know if that's very appropriate for most people to be 3 to 5 years worth of expenses.
Yeah, I would say to everybody out there, you do need an emergency fund, but it's always going to be based on what you're doing. What I mean by that is not everybody can have 5 years worth of savings sitting inside because you're probably going to need it if you're, middle class, Main Street person that we do business with all the time. That's going to be it's going to be liquid to you, yeah, but it's not going to earn anything for you. So would you rather have $300,000 like Tim was using as an example, sitting in a mason jar in your backyard, which is kind of what you would be doing in a bank, basically. If you put in a savings account or a checking account, you're not earning anything on it. So what is your money supposed to do for you? It's supposed to provide liquidity for you and also to pay your bills and do the things that you want to do. But, if it's just sitting there being dead, what's the purpose of it? I have a client that came in one day and we were sitting down talking through our roadmap process, gathering information that we need. And she said that she was very disappointed because she didn't have what she needed for, her liquidity bucket. And I said, well, how much do you feel like that you need? And she says, I need $500,000. And I was kind of taken back a little bit. I'm like, what do you need $500,000 in liquidity for? Yeah. Are you going to buy a house or what? She said, no, it's just what I want to do. I said, okay, I understand that because it's your personal goal. But I said, it doesn't make financial sense to me if you're not having a purpose for that amount of money. I said, by the way, how much do you have? She says, I have $496,000 in the checking account. I'm like, then why are you worried about that other $4,000? But everybody's different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got different goals and aspirations. So you can't argue with somebody like that. You can just say, listen, this is kind of what I think, but it's up to you and what you want to do. And that's what we help people guide them to.
It's like planning a trip, utilizing a roadmap, or I guess a GPS these days, perhaps. Everyone is starting from a different location, and where they're trying to get is probably going to be a little bit different. The three of us all took different paths to get here this morning. And so, at the end of the day, how we go about doing it is going to vary. And knowing that along the way, there are going to be detours, things that might sidetrack us, traffic or, market downturns in the case of, what we're actually talking about here, or geopolitical concerns, things like that. But how do we get back on track? That's where that customized approach comes into play. And that is what you get with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners with that customized retirement roadmap process. But it all begins with that phone call, 804-635-3550. There is a quote when it comes to having money, 3 to 5 years of expenses, somewhere that is easily accessible, free from market downturns. It's a quote. It's about 100 years old now. It's a ship in harbor is safe from storm, but that's not what ships are for. Your money, yes, could be safe, could be in a stable value fund, or in a coffee can in your backyard, but it's not growing. And 5 years from now, the buying power of that is going to be less. So finding that right blend, and it's going to vary from person to person, all starts with sitting down and speaking with the fiduciaries, Ralph and Tim Short at Welcome Home Financial Partners. They're going to tell you what they think, what they recommend, educate you. At the end of the day, let you make that decision based on that information, hopefully as well informed as possible. 804-635-3550. But let's talk about it, because it is the start of the year. People are getting serious about their finances, and they may be coming in for that first appointment. In any case, when you meet someone for the first time, you really don't know what to expect when you guys sit down with clients for the first time, how does that meeting typically go? What are some questions they should ask? And if they don't ask, you will bring to the table for them?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that they need to understand is what the process looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk about it all the time about the retirement roadmap, but the first meeting when we sit down with people, we don't do much of the talking, right? We want to get to know them as much as we can because we keep it to no more than an hour. So we're trying to figure out exactly what they're trying to do, but they also need to understand how the process is going to work because it's a lot easier to go through the process when you kind of understand what's coming up, right? But I think one of the biggest things people underestimate, because Dad, how many times do we sit down with people and they're like, oh, hey, what's your fees? Well, we don't know yet. Like, we don't know what we're going to recommend you, right? So how am I going to tell you what this is going to look like, what the cost to you is going to be until we build that roadmap? But, sitting down with us with the 2-meeting process of building that roadmap, that's not going to cost you anything, just a little bit of time and a little bit of work on your end just to bring in some documents and a couple other pieces of information. But, there's so many people that get hung up on the fees, and this is always a hot conversation to have because it's not about who charges you less. It's about the value of it and what you're getting for it. So, if we don't spend an hour of time to get to know you and see what your family dynamics look like, what you want to do in retirement, do you want to relocate, right? I had a conversation this week about somebody who wants to relocate to California. Well, guess what's the biggest thing we've got to improve on is cost of living, right? It's a little bit more expensive in California than it is in Virginia. So we've got to take a look at all that stuff. But if you don't tell me this, things are going to be a lot different. So, there's so many people out there who are obsessed with the fees and what the overall cost is going to be, but you got to understand what the process is going to look like. And then you also really have to kind of peel back the onion and tell us what you want to do, your goals, your aspirations, your hobbies, your family dynamics. There's a lot of things that go into that first meeting.
And most people have never done anything by sitting down with an advisor when they first come in. I mean, there are some people that have advisors, but a lot of them have never sat down with anybody. Now they have a 401k, but they might have a conversation by phone every once in a while. But that's not an advisory type of situation. That's just pick up the phone and call me and I'll tell you what I've been told to tell you. But this is a little different. And a lot of people have never done it. They get scared. I mean, I remember one client that came in, a young woman that was young woman. She's in late 50s, but she was trying to figure out when she was going to retire. And she came in because she had to have a Saturday appointment, which we accommodate for people that need it, because not everybody has time to come in during the day or whatever. She came in and she said, I am so scared and I'm so nervous. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, what are you scared of? And she said, I didn't get any sleep for the last 2 days trying to figure out what we were going to do today. Oh. And I said, the only thing I can tell you that we're going to do is we're going to sit down and have a conversation about your income and expenses and your aspiration, your dreams, what you want to do when you want to retire. I said, that's all we're going to do here today. And I do remember one, we used to have an event before COVID. We had about 250 people at a dinner. And just thanking our clients for being clients. And I asked one of our newer clients to speak a little bit about his experience. And he was military. And he got up on the stage and started talking about, well, you know how it is when you get to a financial advisor's office and you are put in this conference room and all of a sudden all these walnut plaques and everything is staring you in the face, and he shuts the door and you hear this click, and I'm sitting there, what are you trying to say? And he goes, it's not like that here. And he said, because most people, when they come in here, they expect to sign papers on the first meeting to give all your money over to you. That's not what we do here. Just like last night, I had a client that came in at 5 o'clock and prospect, and we were sitting there talking, and he said, I'm very leery of talking to anybody about money. I've already been to 2 advisor companies, and guess what? I was so nervous because they kept talking over my head and talking about this, talking about what they could do and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I don't get that feeling here. I said, well, that's not what we're here to do. We're supposed to try and help you be at ease when you start talking about money, because it's a personal thing. Not everybody likes talking about money. I doubt very seriously that 99.9% of the people listening likes talking to their spouse, talking to their kids about money. So that's our job, is just pull out the information that we need to do our job. That's it on the first meeting. That's it.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. And I remember that not speech, but that conversation that he had in front of everybody, and he wanted to do that on his own, which I thought was kind of nice because we didn't ask him to do it. But one thing to point out, and just a little, I'm going off track here, I'm having a squirrel moment, but talking about the events is, obviously they've been talking about with the flying squirrels in the new stadium. Just to point out, is we'll be in that I believe it's the first series of the brand new stadium this year in April. So that's going to be a great time. So everybody be on the lookout for that. But yeah, just a little sidebar. Sorry, I had a squirrel moment since we were talking about events. But it is. I think we kind of pride ourselves. Obviously, Ralph is my father and I'm the son, and it's more of a family atmosphere, and it's not about the betas and alphas and standard deviation. It's more about trying to get to know you, being part of the family, that type of thing. And I will tell you is that when people feel comfortable, because talking about money, whether it's your kid, whether it's your parents, grandparents, cousins, brother-in-laws, whatever, there's so many people that don't want to discuss that until they feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the most important thing as far as trying to get to know them, is they feel like they're actually cared for. And that's what happens here is, we care for them. If their retirement doesn't turn out the way that they want and they followed our plan, well, guess what? That's on us. And, there's so many people out there now that want to use the robo-advisor or AI or whatever. Well, what can you not do with them? You can't hold them accountable.
Right.
You can't knock on their front door of the office and say, hey, I want a meeting, right? So that's why I think it's important, the value of having a actual human being as your advisor, and who's local too, right? Because one of the worst things that you can do, and we experienced this when COVID hit, is everybody tried to do the virtual thing. Well, I know Dad can say this. We spent 30 minutes trying to get people to unmute their computer, right? So that's why, virtual has its place, right? I'm not saying virtual is the worst thing on planet Earth, because that's the way of the future. But on the same side is there's so many people, and we talked about this at that time, there's so many people that still want to sit across the conference room table. And I think it's important.
You mentioned something, Ralph, there. We were talking about the lady who lost a couple nights of sleep before coming in. And I think it's actually probably something that happens very often. She's never done this before. She's never retired before. It's first time retiring, And for a lot of people, a lot of our listeners out there, they've never retired before, but the name of the show, again, Aspire to Retire. They aspire to. They hope to be able to retire one day. Why not turn to a team that has helped numerous people right here in the Richmond area retire, stay retired if that's what they want to do, or, navigate to, through, and beyond. It all starts with that phone call, setting up a time for that complimentary meeting, 804-635-3550. You can also, find out more about them on the website, welcomehomefp.com. Click on the media tab, find out when to see them on TV. We're beating up the people on TV earlier, not beating up on Ralph and Tim. But also coming out to the events and meeting them in a more informal setting. That's how it all begins. Really quick, I just want to make sure that I heard correctly. One thing that people will not leave with after that first meeting is a plan, that retirement roadmap in hand. Is that right?
Oh, correct. Yeah. I mean, hopefully they're going to leave with a good feeling of, hey, I believe that this team's got my back. But yeah, this is not a hour, okay, hey, here's the next 40 years of your life right here. Mm-hmm. Here's your portfolio. Have a nice day.
Sign the papers.
You certainly don't.
It's not like that.
Yeah, you don't want the 40 hours of next 40 years of your life to be summed up within 1 hour. It takes time to develop that plan and to get to know you. So it is a conversation, and there's a conversation I think worth having, complimentary after all. WelcomeHomeFP.com, 804-635-3550. Last month, December, holiday season, of course. Home Alone, now one of my favorite holiday movies of all time, celebrated its 30th anniversary, and its star, Macaulay Culkin, was just 5 at the time, but now he gets to watch it on his own with his 2 young kids.
My son was asking questions. He wanted to see a family photo of like all my siblings. So I ran downstairs, I got it, and he immediately, his eyes darted to me, and he goes, hey, that kid looks like Kevin. And I go, he sure does, doesn't he? He's starting to put it together. I'm trying to keep up the illusion as long as possible, but I know some kid at recess is gonna ruin it. But at the same time, I can watch that movie now. I can watch pretty much the body of my work now. It takes on a completely different meaning. Now that I have kids, I get to show it to them and stuff like that. And I see the joy that it brings them and stuff. It's like, now it's different. The game has changed for me. Before it was a gig. Now it's something I can stand next to and be proud of and show my kids.
I misspoke, by the way. It is the 35th anniversary. Macaulay Culkin was 10. I added 5 years and I subtracted 5 years. But, sorry, refreshing my page here. A younger Macaulay Culkin saw his movies as his legacy. But Like many, those priorities quickly changed with the arrival of his children. How should some adjust their retirement planning when their focus moves from personal goals to leaving a legacy, perhaps for their children or their grandchildren?
Well, Chris, full disclosure is, and I hope my wife is listening, but we still have one Christmas tree that's still up.
That's okay.
So even though we're 2 weeks into the new year and it's still there, and we do this 12 days of Christmas, well, that's passed. And I told her that this week. Well, yeah, okay. So we're good. But when it comes to this, I think one of the most important things, and actually this just happened this week, is, start those family conversations now. We've got a set of clients that became clients a couple of years back. Great people. Well, their son moved out to Vietnam and he's out there working, living his best life. Apparently it's fairly inexpensive to live there. He's been there for quite some time. He's very much an outdoors person. He's my age. So he actually came back for Christmas and still here. And they wanted him to come in and meet with us because he's the eldest of the two and he's going to be in charge of the entire estate. So that was a really cool conversation to have. It was nice sitting at the conference room table. Obviously, it's a 12-hour difference, so trying to do a Zoom or a phone call with him is going to be a little bit difficult.
For one of you, yeah.
So, oh, absolutely. So, and I felt bad for him because he's been here for over 2 weeks and he was still struggling with the 12-hour time difference.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so he was still on their time. So, but I think it's very important for people to understand not just their family dynamics, their kids, their grandkids, but everybody needs to be on the same page. And we've said this before, is the worst thing that you can do is have all these plans in place, not have anybody know what to do. You pass away and now they're grieving and they're trying to struggle with, hey, who do I call? Who do I contact? Where did mom and dad and everybody else have their money? What's their plan? So I think that's one of the biggest things that's often overlooked, is not having these conversations before death, because there's no conversation to have at that point in time. So kind of bringing everybody, beneficiaries, up to speed with what their plan looks like.
But you really need to make sure that you do update your beneficiaries on any type of contracts that you might have, or any IRAs, any type of bank accounts, anything like that, life insurance policies. Because believe it or not, there are a lot of people that has come through our offices, and after one of the spouses dies, we could do our thing, have to process everything, and come to find out nobody ever changed the beneficiary, and it went to their ex-wife or their ex-husband. And it's once that happens, the companies, they have to pay out to whoever's on record. So I think the other thing people need to understand is your priorities will change just like your life changes, because guess what? What I just got through speaking to somebody that lost a 21-year-old son who, it was through an accident, and he was the person that was going to be in charge of his estate, and now he's got to redo everything. So, no matter where you think you're going, things are going to happen. It's going to make changes, and you're going to have to adjust. So just because you think you got something in place and it's ironclad, something's going to happen that might change your goals or aspirations.
Just like with the overall financial plan and the legacy planning, the estate planning part is part of that. It does need to be reassessed, reevaluated from time to time, especially when there are major changes, the addition of a loved one, the subtraction of a loved one, or a family dynamic that changes, and for whatever reason, because that is something that, as you pointed out, when it comes time to open up those documents and execute what's in them, that's it. You're going with what is written there. It's the last one in. And so it is important. It's not the most pleasant conversation I have, or to have, understandably, to focus on one's own mortality, but it is important, and it can avoid a lot of more difficult conversations down the line. It is all part of the process, getting you to, through, and beyond retirement. And it all begins, again, with that conversation, 804-635-3550. Let me take that back. Actually, it begins by joining us here on the show, and so we appreciate that. The next step is letting Ralph Short, Tim Short, the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, with their 3 offices here in the Richmond location, in the Richmond area, work for you. 804-635-3550. Or you can always go to the website. That is welcomehomefp.com. And as always, want to thank you for joining us right here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Stay safe out there. Stay warm if you can. Take care of one another. Gentlemen, appreciate the time as always. And as we wrap up here, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
Thank you, Chris. And yeah, we want to thank everybody for listening. I think it's important. Obviously, it's the new year. I don't know when the most appropriate time is to stop saying New Year's to anybody, but
we'll say February.
We're 2 weeks. Yeah, we're 2 weeks in. So, but these 2 weeks going by quickly. And next thing you know, we're going to be doing the holidays again. So now's the best time to, give us a call. And like we talked about before, is you're not coming in for an hour and you're going to walk away with a plan, right? We need to get to know you and figure out what your goals are. So I think that's most often overlooked with a lot of other advisory services out there, is they just are trying to push you to, the standard deviation model instead of trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. So that's what you get with us. So, we love the opportunity to bring you into the office and create your very own retirement roadmap. It's complimentary to you. If that's not, what you want to do and you want to meet us at one of the events around town, go to our website. You can see where those are located and what the times are. And we love the opportunity to meet with you anywhere. So just give us a shout and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.